Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Roberts, and we're here today to look at examining presentation power. How can we make our presentations have power? Power that moves people in the direction that we want to move them. Okay, so what do you see here? You see a team. Oh my goodness, this team is in Italy, just north of Rome, and they are designing furniture. So they're expressing themselves as well. They're looking at data, they're looking at pictures, and some are turned and they're looking at something else and they're having a conversation. Oh my goodness. And does their location mean anything? Well, I think it does. They ship all over Europe furniture, and we got to see it on a study abroad trip. And they were asking, so what? They even in their display room had a swing that would go into a living room of a home in Italy. And yes, people do put swings in their living rooms. We were surprised. Okay, so they are observing what people like, and they're observing how they can make things a little more different, but then also playful and sleek and minimalist. They're talking, they're observing, and then they're questioning. They're questioning, what if? So what? We've talked about that so many times, haven't we? In your writing, in your presentations, wherever you go, I hope that you will always be asking, so what and what if? We had the experience but missed the meaning. An approach to the meaning restores the experience in a different form. T.S. Eliot in Four Quartets. You know, we've had students on study abroad trips who were in a bus. We were traveling from one city to another, and we got to Padua in Italy. And the students finally got a connection, an internet connection, as they were off the bus. And so they hurriedly got to their phones and they started texting their friends and relatives. And I said, wait, look up, look around you. What do you see? Where are you? They had lost their perspective. They were experiencing being in Padua, Italy, but not really. They were texting. That also happens when we're on study abroad trips, and the students just start photographing everything. And they photograph. And we urge them, first, look around you, observe. What are you experiencing? What is the history? Capture the meaning. Capture the meaning before you start taking photos. And that is also what we need to guard against as we're gathering research. We need to guard against just compiling it all and not experiencing the meaning. Do you know what you're reading? Do you know what this experience means? Well, it's all about the ingredients, isn't it? It's about the ingredients that go to make up the entire meal. And this was a floating market in Thailand and a study abroad in Thailand. So it's all about your ingredients, but it's also about how you put them together in your presentation. So Chris Anderson was the head of TED and TED Talks, and he writes, your mission for the presentation is Your number one mission as a speaker is to take something that matters deeply to you and to rebuild it inside the minds of your listeners. Rebuilding what matters to you in the minds of your listeners. So it's showing why it matters, what the question is you're trying to answer, and the problem you're trying to solve. It's you having the listeners experience your passion. You are fleshing out each point you make with real examples and stories. You are becoming a storyteller. Okay, so how might that play out? In TED Talks by Chris Anderson, TED Talks by Chris Anderson, on pages 37 and 38, I want to read you an example. This sample issue applies to talks of any length. Let me try a personal example with you. Let's say I've been asked to speak for just 2 minutes to introduce who I am. Here's version 1. Although I'm British, I was born in Pakistan. My father was a missionary eye surgeon, and my early years were spent there and in India and Afghanistan. At age 13, I was sent to boarding school in England, and after that, I went to Oxford University for a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics. I started work as a local newspaper journalist in Wales, then moved to a pirate radio station in the Seychelles Islands for a couple of years to write and read a world news service. Back in the UK in the mid-1980s, I fell in love with computers and started a series of magazines devoted to them. It was a great time to be launching specialist magazines, and my company doubled in size every year for 7 years. I sold it, moved to the US, and tried again. By the year 2000, my business had grown to 2,000 employees, 150 magazines, and websites. But the tech bubble was about to burst, and when it did, nearly destroyed my company. Besides, who needs magazines when you have the internet? I left at the end of 2001. Happily, I had put some money into a nonprofit foundation that I was able to use to buy TED, which back then was an annual conference in California. That's been my full-time passion ever since. So how was that? Let's compare it with this version. I want you to come with me to a student's room at Oxford University in 1977. You open the door, and at first it seems like there's nobody there. But wait, over in the corner, there's a boy lying on the floor, face up, staring at the ceiling. He's been like that for more than 90 minutes. That's me, 20-year-old me. I am thinking hard. I am trying, please don't laugh, I am trying to solve the problem of free will. That deep mystery that has stumped the world's philosophers for at least 2 millennia? Yep, I'm taking it on. Anyone looking objectively at the scene would have concluded that this boy was some weird combination of arrogant, deluded, or perhaps just socially awkward and lonely, preferring the company of ideas to people. But my own narrative, I'm a dreamer. I've always been obsessed by the power of ideas. And I'm pretty sure it's that inward focus that helped me survive growing up in boarding schools in India and England, away from my missionary parents. And that gave me the confidence to try to build a media company. Certainly, it was the dreamer in me that fell in love so deeply with TED. Most recently, I've been dreaming about the revolution in public speaking and what it could lead to. Ladies and gentlemen, which version would appeal to you? Which version did you experience? I'll venture to say it was the one that was a story that showed the why of this. So your presentation needs to be focused on the audience, not on you. No, what does the audience want to hear? What do you need the audience to know? You need to speak in their language. You need to understand their focus and how they will respond. You need to know who will be in favor of your idea, who's already on board, who's already opposed to your idea, and who has no opinion. You also need to know who the thought leader is, the decision maker, okay, the power broker. Who is that person in the room? Depending on your evaluation or your proposal, you need to appeal to the power broker and the one who has not made a decision. Those who are already opposed, don't worry about those. The power broker and the one who hasn't made a decision just yet. Audience focused. You want them to listen to you. And that means they won't be reading your slide if they're listening to you. But if you have many words on your slide or much data on your slide, they'll be interpreting the slide instead of you. So make it minimal, make it appealing, and make your slide interpreted, able to be interpreted in 3 seconds or fewer. Okay. So what do you do? What do you do to make the listener really listen? Well, one thing you can do, you can make your screen go dark. You can black out your screen. Yeah, you can do that. I've done it and it works. You can ask the audience questions. You can lean forward at those important times and you can ask them questions. And then silence, pause until it's just right. They have turned their faces to you. They're listening. Maybe they're even leaning forward. Whisper, ask them an important question as you dropped your voice. And then raise it for your final comment. Oh my, there's so much we can do. And your ideas matter. They matter. You've observed a challenge at work. You have experienced that challenge. You see opportunities that are available, and you know that you can create something even better, a better process, a better product. It's now time to present your ideas and support it with other evidence. There are so many opportunities and possibilities out there for you. So your ideas do matter. It's now time. It's now time to create your presentation, your slides, or your props. Remember, it's all about here we are now, what's current, what could be in the future, and here's my great idea. This is the bliss we could be experiencing. We could be experiencing if we go from the current to the future to the ideal. And I am summing up how to do that today for you. Want to come on the ride? So Nancy Duarte, in Secrets of a Great Talk, gives us the pattern that Steve Jobs used, that Martin Luther King Jr. used in the I Have a Dream speech. And it's, here's what is, But wait just a minute. This is where we are today. We could be up here if we took these actions. But let's remember where we are. This is what it is today. But we could go higher. We could accomplish so much more if we went this way. But we're here. We're here. Let's you and I go together and let's experience this amazing opportunity together. Let's go to the bliss together, together. That's her action. That's the call to action. Come along with me. Experience the bliss instead of where we are right now. Slides should have one idea, and they should also have your objectives and what measures you're going to take and the timing. When are you going to do this? Responsibilities. Who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for that? What's my task? What's your task? And then how are we going to go through this process? How are we going to journey together to make this a successful opportunity and creativity? And then, of course, we have our budget. Now, we need to include as much as possible, but remember that your time is limited. Your time is limited, and executives only have a certain amount of time. So be cognizant of that. This is how you're going to make your presentation. Okay, but there are many design elements in a presentation. So what do? You think about, what is the story? What's the story I'm going to begin with and end with, framing? But what is the story about why I'm here today? Why am I here? What is the need? What's the challenge? Or what's the opportunity? Give the background of this issue that you're dealing with. And you will have some text in your slides. So you need to consider the text and the images that you will use. Hopefully they will be images that are meaningful to the audience. And then the data, make sure it's legitimate and it has been tested and tried. And then looking at the colors you use. If you've noticed in the presentations, I'm using the Redlands colors, gray and burgundy. And then the movement. You noticed that when I came to the slide, there was movement in the slide. Props. Sometimes props work well. Recently, I gave a teaching, and I thought it would be nice to have a tumbleweed. The day before, I went out, and my husband is so wonderful and supportive. He got a tumbleweed for me, but I had to cut it. I had to cut it because it was too big to fit into the car. And so we loaded it. I wrapped it up in a sheet. We loaded it in the trunk, and oh my goodness, the twigs started breaking off, and it was just a terrible mess. The next morning, I cut some oranges from the tree with the branch, and I had to fight the bees for some rosemary branches because the rosemary branches had bloomed and they were just beautiful and wonderful fragrance. So I cut those, and then I also cut a calamandrin branch with a calamandrin fruit on it. It's a cross between a lime and an orange, And we fell in love with calamansis when we were in the Philippines. We lived in the Philippines. And so I was fortunate enough to find a calamandrin tree here in the States. So I didn't use slides, but I put the tumbleweed on the floor next to where the podium was, and I put the vase that had the rosemary and the calamandrin and the oranges. I put them next to the tumbleweed, and so there was activity on the stage before I gave my presentation, and so the audience had to look at the tumbleweed and the fruit during that time. And then I came up and spoke and did not address the tumbleweeds or the fruit until the very end. So I had framed the presentation not with words, but with images. And so all the while that I was presenting, the audience kept looking at the tumbleweeds and the fruit. I didn't refer to it until the very end to make my point. At the end, I picked up the tumbleweed and I asked the audience what it was. So asking questions. And I asked what it was good for. And they said for nothing. And I gave them a short little description of how a tumbleweed grows. It actually does grow and is lush and becomes green and has pretty little flowers on it. And mice like to eat it. But then as it grows, its leaves fall and the flowers fall. And then the tumbleweed or a Russian thistle, it breaks off. It breaks away from the roots. And then it has all these little seeds, tumbleweed seeds in it. And the wind blows it and it rolls around and it distributes all the seeds for the next crop of tumbleweeds. Well, I asked them, well, what good is it in California for? And they said, fires. It's fodder for fires. Yes, tumbleweeds. And then I picked up the vase that held the oranges, the calamandrin, and the rosemary. And I asked them about that fruit and how it's good to taste. It's fragrant. Its flowers are fragrant. The rosemary is an herb, and so we can use it to flavor our foods and everything. And you know what? It was so amazing, and I shouldn't have been amazed. But they afterwards, people came up to me and said, I'll remember what you were talking about because of the tumbleweed. And the compare contrast of the tumbleweed and the fruit. Nothing fancy. They wondered about that tumbleweed and fruit throughout my presentation. I built suspense. And then I asked them questions. And then I gave them a call to action. It's very similar to what Simon Sinek talks about in his How Great Leaders Inspire. And the connection to that talk is in your Moodle session. And he describes that it's the passion. It's why an organization does something. It's the mission of the organization. It's not the what that necessarily sells. It's the why and how are they organizing. So he brings a lot of passion, and all he uses is paper and a magic marker, and he draws circles. It's the passion that you bring to your presentation. Passion prevails, my friends. Passion, we can see it in your body language. We can feel it as you move and as you gesture. Passion, we can hear it in your voice, the varied tone and pace of your words. Passion, we can experience it in the tension that you bring to the issue. Bring some tension, bring tension. And then passion, we can experience it in the stories that you tell us. And passion, we can experience it and relate to your ideas. Passion prevails. We can agree when we see your creativity and a new way of doing things. Passion prevails and causes us to give a call to action, a mighty call to action, a call to action that everybody wants to get on board because it is going to make a difference. If there's no call to action or no question to ponder later, then why are we wasting the audience's time? To get to the technicalities, there are a few apps that you can use. You can use Canva. I use Canva. I use PowerPoint. I have used Prezi, and they are all powerful presentation apps. There are more online, but I'm not as familiar. And you can look at shapes and colors, and you can immediately identify them. Okay, so what must your presentation be? It must be distinctive. There must be some quality about your presentation that people will remember, something unique, something that you have contributed to the body of knowledge that we have. And it must be organized. If you go from one subject to another and the people are having trouble following you, then you will lose them. Okay, so you must lead them by the hand on the path together towards the call to action or the question. Oh, but what if I'm nervous? What if I'm nervous and I just can't speak in front of people? Well, my friend, I was too. When in college, I had a presentation to give. I had practiced. And when I got up in front of the students, there were maybe 15. I started talking and I was trembling. And finally I said, I can't think. And you know, that's okay, admit it. And then the audience becomes empathetic to you and they understand. And that their sympathy will lead you on. You'll gather confidence then. But if you're still nervous, you can do the penguin. And so what's a penguin? You stand up, you scrunch your shoulders up into your neck for at least 15 seconds, and you take a deep breath, you let your shoulders down, and now you're in a proper position to breathe properly, and you will give a great presentation. Or focusing on the end result will give you success at the end. Okay, that's what athletes do. The Olympians do that. They focus. Have you ever noticed them? How they're concentrating? They're focusing on the end result, the success that they're going to be having. It's goal-oriented and it's result-oriented. So focus on the end result. The other thing you can do is you can tap your wrists. It has a calming effect. Tap your forehead or your cheeks, and then take a deep breath and smile. It's all going to be over soon, and you are going to give an awesome presentation. Presentation power. With a little work, practice, and confidence, you can create a power-filled presentation that will make a difference in the lives of others, in the life of your workplace, in the lives of your community. It's all up to you. You are amazing. And I just look forward to your presentations. Take care. Until next time.